And now I'm going to answer any questions that have occurred. No form of therapy is a helpful or useful way to manage overthinking and overreaction, because all forms of therapy are a reaction to the condition the therapist is trying to resolve. The fact that therapy is in order to change the way you are, trying to get a result, is trying to get rid of what we're seeing as a problem, is indicating this. We're not understanding that what overthinking really is there for, why it is there. When there is disturbance unresolved within the person of you, this disturbance, whether it be fear, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, anger, or just unexplainable disturbances which are due to life experiences that you may have forgotten. Because of that disturbance, you'll find yourself thinking a lot. And we think a lot when we're disturbed because, one, thinking gives us an escape or a distraction from what we're feeling. And the other is we think a lot about the condition in order to try and find a way to resolve it. And all forms of therapy are primarily based on, particularly psychological type therapies, are primarily based on thinking about what is seen to be a problem, and trying to resolve that problem. But it doesn't work because primarily the thing that's seen to be a problem, which is the disturbance or the condition within the person, is not itself a problem. It's exactly the way you should be. It's there due to something that you haven't finished, processing. It's a developmental opportunity that's been missed due to thinking about it, due to reacting to it, or due to it being overwhelming and you being unable to deal with it at whatever time you overrode it or ignored it. It's getting back in touch with that feeling or that sensation or that disturbance as it actually is felt within the body of you that will reactivate that process and enable that process that hasn't finished to come to its own natural end. But any intervention, any psychological intervention to analyse and to modify and to get rid of or change that problem in any way whatsoever, change that experience in any way whatsoever, is itself interfering with the only way we can heal. And the only way we can truly heal is naturally. Nature takes care of itself, and the body is nature. When we don't intervene, when we don't get in the way of this process that we're going through, then it processes. And how we reactivate these processes that we have got in the way of is to feel the disturbances in ourselves, whether it be physical illness, pain, or distress. Feel the disturbances of these within ourselves, in the body of us. And by feeling them as they are, not thinking about them, just feeling them as they are, this is how you reactivate nature's natural healing process, which has been interfered with at some point by your thought processes, by your reactions, by your objections, by your denial. By feeling this again, you're getting directly into the contact with yourself as you actually are, without judging it, without criticising it. You're not trying to get rid of it. You don't need to do that. You don't need to get rid of it. You don't actually want to get rid of it. You need to process it. And through the process of that, by feeling it, you activate the process, and the process can be quite disturbing. But disturbance is something that is necessary in a process in order for the evolution of a species or an animal or a creature to occur through whatever it is they need to develop through. So I wouldn't encourage any form of psychological therapy. It's a reaction to something very, very natural, which you cannot resolve or help through reacting to it or from the thought process. You need to get in touch with it as a felt sense within the body of yourself in order to allow it to process in its own time. And it will. Okay, when you get in a whirlwind of overthinking over any topic whatsoever, and you're, in this question you're saying over a specific topic, what is this whirlwind of overthinking? Obviously your thinking has not succeeded in getting the result that you're trying to get. And the more you struggle to get that result of understanding the problem or the topic of your concern or resolving the topic of your concern, the more you try and resolve that, the more you think about it. And the more you think about it, the more objection, the more problem you create. The whirlwind gets bigger. But the curious thing is the only reason you're thinking about it still, and the whirlwind is getting bigger still, is because thinking about it didn't work to start with. And when thinking about a problem doesn't work, instead of realising that this is the wrong approach, that's why it's not working, and changing that approach, we just try another way of thinking about it. We just keep pushing it. Now, what are we doing here? We're in a whirlwind of overthinking because we're not happy or we're dissatisfied or we're distressed with a situation or a topic, another person, or ourselves, or the world. Whatever it happens to be, it's still the same. We are not accepting the fact. We are rejecting the fact. I don't like the way you talk to me, and you're not going to change the way you're talking to me. I'm going to do everything I can to get you to start talking to me in a different way. And when I can't do that, I just keep going. I just keep fighting you. I just keep trying to get you to do what I want and behave the way I want you to behave. And this is a whirlwind. It's impossible. It goes on and on and on. What have I done there? I haven't accepted the fact of your behaviour. I'm not saying like the behaviour. I'm saying accept the fact of this person's way of talking to you, and most importantly, more importantly, the fact of how it's making you feel, and the fact of how it makes you feel because you can't find a way to change the situation. When you're distressed or unhappy, sometimes you've just got to accept that fact instead of always trying to change that fact. If you've tried to change the fact and it's not changing, don't keep trying to change it. That's insane. Come back to the fact itself, the fact of how it leaves you feeling, the thing you can't resolve, the problem you can't fix. Feel how that makes you feel, not being able to resolve it, not being able to fix it. Come back to the feeling of disturbance that causes you in not being able to get what you want. And in coming back to the disturbance that causes you, and just feeling that, you are coming back to yourself and enabling yourself to process whatever it is you need to process to develop further into understanding the dynamics of the situation, but more importantly, into understanding the actual origin of your distress. And the origin of your distress won't be as it appears initially, the thing you can't fix, but the way you can't accept how it leaves you feeling, and in feeling how it leaves you feeling, the ideas you have about yourself and the way things should be, that fuels the continuation of that feeling. So, for example, I'm poor and I don't want to be poor. Well, you might not want to be poor, but you are poor. Why you don't want to be poor financially, then you're constantly thinking about ways to be rich. Or constantly thinking about ways to achieve that result. Rather than being poor or being without that wealth and responding to your life as a person with a lesser amount of money. And responding to life as a person with a lesser amount of money means I've got less choices. But it doesn't mean I'm a lesser person. It just means I've got less choices. Now, can I embrace that life restriction? What I'm seeing as life restriction. Can I live with that? Of course I can. But I can only live with that if I drop the ideas of what doesn't exist, which I want to exist, and come back to the real live facts of what does exist and how my life is and how that feels to be me in that life. Coming back to that, you have something real. Because you have something real, over time, by feeling that, you'll start to feel okay with that. The process of that is that whatever ideas you are stuck in about wealth, for example, whatever ideas you're stuck in about whatever it is you are having conflict with, those ideas were formulated somewhere along the line of your life and you got stuck there, fixed. Whenever you get stuck and fixed about how life should be, when life isn't that way, it's not life no longer being that way that is the problem. It's where you got stuck and fixed along the way in some idea of how it should be that's now become the problem when it is no longer that way. And that way of life changing is forcing you to change and adapt, to break free of the idea of yourself and life that you got stuck in, to break free of the idea of yourself and to embrace life afresh. Now, the idea of yourself is thought-based, which creates the problem. But the life of yourself is sensory. The body doesn't care whether it's rich or poor. The body of you, which you are, simply responds to the facts of life all the time because it can. It's never fixed. We're always able to respond. Whereas once we get caught in an idea, we find our ability to respond, to adapt, to move with life, to flow with life, is inhibited by that fixture, by that idea, by that identifying with how we think things should be. And when we can't have things the way we think they should be, why we are suffering that is because we have in some way identified, defined ourselves and our value based on having things that way. And this is not ourselves. This is just an idea that we've got entangled with. And life changes all the time. And when life changes, the distress we feel is those ideas become obsolete. How we think things should be and our ideals about ourselves become obsolete. And we have to change. We only struggle with change when we're fixed in an idea. When we go deeper than an idea into the sensations within the body of ourselves, those sensations and those distresses that have been caused by being stuck in those ideas and life changing, those distresses dissolve. The body absorbs them and they dissipate, leaving you free of the effects of living fixed in an idea and ready and open to embrace life afresh. Good question. About 30 years ago, I had a very busy clinic and I was working with people in a unique way that I developed in working with their body to help them resolve all manner of problems. And I stumbled upon the realisation why people were struggling so much with things that should be really, really simple. And the realisation was simply through interacting with people and seeing them struggle with things they shouldn't be struggling with, but they were. And the realisation was people don't feel, and they don't know the difference between feeling and thinking. So your question is very important, that feeling is a physical sensation. Thinking is a thought process through which we describe physical sensations in the world around us. We talk about it. We think about ourselves. We worry about ourselves. We stress about ourselves. We complain about ourselves. When I feel angry and I have an idea that I shouldn't be angry, then I complain about myself being angry, or I try and change that. This is the thought process. But if I just feel the anger, there's no problem with the anger. If I'm sad and I don't want to be sad, it's thinking that says, I don't want to be sad. The body is not saying, I don't want to be sad. The body understands in a different way to thinking that sadness is absolutely appropriate. You're sad for a reason. And being sad is, in that moment, a necessity for you to process the experience of whatever life has been for you and resolve from its effects. Resolve yourself of its effects. So feeling is a physical sensation. Thinking is a dead and numb thing. You cannot know you are cold through the word, I am cold. You cannot know you are hungry, or you cannot communicate the feeling of hunger and the understanding that you are hungry through the word hunger. It's empty, it's dead. It has no feeling to it. The word sadness has no feeling to it. It's just a description. So in this sense, thoughts are dead and empty and unfeeling things, whereas the body is alive and full of feelings, sensations. When we think about those feelings, we find ourselves complaining about feelings or wanting one feeling over another. So if you find yourself at odds with how you feel, at odds with how you feel is what you think about how you feel. And when you think about feeling, you mix feeling and thinking together. And when you mix feeling and thinking together, you create emotion. An emotion is a dramatisation and an exaggeration of the pure feeling itself into a dramatised, exaggerated state that you find overwhelming. But what's making it overwhelming is your thoughts about that feeling. And your thoughts about that feeling are at odds with that feeling. If you are not at odds with the way you feel, you don't think about it, you just feel it. You're happy to feel it. So thinking and feeling, one is a live physical sensation. Thought is a moment by moment activity. It's only an activity. It's not a thing. It's an activity of the body, like speaking. There's no words. I'm making sounds through the breath and the shape of my mouth. The word is not a thing. It's something that I momentarily bring into sound. But it doesn't exist in its own right. And as soon as I stop speaking, the word it disappears. It's the result of my action. Thinking is the result of pressure in the body, sensation in the body. And that pressure, that sensation in the body causes thinking and speaking and even action. To understand the difference, you need to sit quietly with yourself and feel the sensations in your body. In feeling the sensations in your, doesn't matter if it's the most subtle sensation. You might feel numb. That's a sensation. Feel that numbness until you, over time, by just feeling and feeling and feeling, however you feel in your body, especially if there's pain there, because that's the thing you avoid the most. And it's through avoiding pain and distress that you've actually desensitized and forgotten how to feel. By overusing thinking to solve your problems, and it's not working, we have desensitized and simply numbed out to those problems, what we're seeing as problems. And the problems I'm talking about are also in themselves a solution. And that is, however we feel in the form of distress or pain or anxiety, whatever life effects are within the feeling of our body, these we need to feel. But feel it as a physical sensation and just let your thinking go on in the background. Keep coming back to the feeling. When the feeling becomes overwhelming, this is because without realizing it, you are mentally reacting to it. And this is emotionalizing. Come back to the feeling of the body again. And just keep coming back to the feeling in the body, letting your thinking go on. And eventually it will dissipate. Thanks very much. I'll see you on the next talk. Bye for now.